Welcome to the Authors Hour. My name is Fred Zirm, and I represent the Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center. We are a group that aims to encourage and support writers and writing on the institution grounds and beyond by supporting and supplementing the official institutional activities of the Writers Center. So there are several weekly events we run. One is this, the Authors Hour, every Thursday at 12:15. On Sundays at 5 o'clock, we have an open mic, second floor of this building in the Prose Room. Anyone 18 or over is welcome either as a reader or a listener. On Tuesdays in the Poetry Room on the second floor at approximately 1:15 after the poetry brown bag, we have an informal critique. If you want to bring in optimistically 10 copies, sometimes only one copy is necessary, but 10 copies of one page of your work, there will be a sort of guided informal response to what you bring in, guided by a published writer, very often me, but some other published writers as well. We also have special projects you should be aware of. One, if you are a writer and you have a book you would like to sell, on July 17th, we have a book fair on Vester Plaza from noon to 2. If you would like to read your favorite poem, or at least one of your favorite poems, we have a project that was initiated by Robert Pinsky when he was here, former poet laureate, called the Robert Pinsky Favorite Poem Project. So that on, I believe it's the 24th, I would need to double check that, we'll be reading poems in the Hall of Philosophy. And there are writing contests. If you're a writer, or you haven't been a writer, but you want to become one and you want to enter the contest, you have until July 31st to contact your muse and submit something. With all of these things, you can go to our web page, not a full page, but site, but web page at www.chq.org/FCWC. And you can find out information about these activities and anything like that. We have 2 readers today. I do want to give, just in case there's anybody who came here to see Marcia Giusti and Sarah Javian, who are going to do a musical presentation of some poems of Joe McDougall, a former instructor here at the Writers Center. Unfortunately, COVID intervened. Marcia and her husband are down in Virginia doing okay, but they do have COVID, so they couldn't be here with us. They will be with us next summer, not this summer. I'd like to introduce our first reader. I'm going to save myself transposing pronouns. I'm going to do it in the first person as Dave submitted it, rather than trying to change it to he and not doing it all the time, okay? So Dave says, my work is exclusively about the Mohawk Valley in eastern New York State. My short stories have appeared online in print journals and in the collection, The Memory of Broken Things. That's from 2013. The characters who inhabit my prose are the common people of the mid-20th century mill towns and villages of the valley. They are what the novelist William Kennedy has called the splendid nobodies of a time past. I have also edited, Dave says, a history of the Mohawk Valley in 2015 and a brief study of the architectural design of the Adirondack Power and Light Steam Generating Station, 2016. The summer of 2018 of New York State Archives magazine featured my article on the architecture of the steam generating station. It continues, I am currently at work on a new collection of short stories set in the Mohawk Valley and entitled Landscape with Figures. Great title. The excerpt I'll be reading is from one of the stories in that forthcoming collection. I give you Dave Northrup.
Well, thank you, Fred, and thank you also to the Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center for affording me this opportunity to read an excerpt from my latest work in progress. I'm currently working, as Fred mentioned, on a collection of short stories about the Mohawk River Valley in eastern New York. I see it as a place defined by its contradictions of both the land and the people. My stories in general are set during the first half of the 20th century. That was the valley's golden age, when its inhabitants believed in the future, believed in that green light at the end of the dock of human possibilities. I write about small farmers, mill hands, merchants, about their magnificent dreams and petty, sometimes violent, self-delusions as they live out their lives in the villages and mill towns that blossom along the river from Utica to Albany. Those collective lives became a testament, as I see it, to the beauty of the place and the dignity of conscious choice. I'm going to read from a story entitled Hey Jude. Jude Stone, the main character, is a young woman who has an epiphany, which sets her on the path to understanding her place in the valley. She's a 21-year-old salesgirl at Lurie's, a small town department store. Jude's father had been an executive with Lurie's before he abandoned the family when Jude was an infant. As a result of her father's leaving, Jude has only had her mother to look to for those answers on how to act and be an adult in Amsterdam, a mill town, or home. Those answers have never come. And so now, Jude, uncertain, fearful, has decided to start out in a small way on her quest for how to be by having a solitary dinner at a neighborhood restaurant she and her mother had frequented years before. Hey Jude. Through the dusty glass, Jude could see that Tuman's dining room was lit but deserted. She pushed against the ladies' entrance door and walked in slowly, her gaze seeking out one of the tables set against the far wall. Then she noticed that none of the tables had place settings, and all she could hear was the faint drone of voices, probably from the TV in the bar. Jude stopped. Maybe Tuman's wasn't serving dinner after all. But then, why would the light be on above the door outside? Directly in front of her, Jude noticed the circular glass of the double doors to the kitchen were lit from the inside. She heard the clank of dishes and hiss of running water, and watched as one of the doors swung toward her, revealing a short, plump blonde with perfectly poised yellow hair. The blonde's face was mask-like, bearing a sheen of heavy makeup, which failed at hiding the pinched and wizened skin of her forehead and cheeks. Looking up at Jude, the blonde narrowed her eyes, cocked her head to one side. A smile began to play across her lips, softening the hard lines of her face. It's Jude. Jude Stone, isn't it? The woman asked. The voice was kind, welcoming. In memory, Jude heard the voice of Nancy Tuman, the owner's wife. But that person was tall, thin, much less wrinkled. And then Jude remembered. Time had passed, and the reality of people changing hit her. The thought occurred to Jude that she was caught between then and now. She was still in the neighborhood she'd known her whole life, though. And "It's me, Mrs. Truman," she heard herself say. "I'm here for dinner, if you're still serving." "Of course we are. It's been a long time. I remember you used to come in here with your mom. How is she?" "Oh, she's okay, working hard in the mill. Jude listened to her hurried voice, thought it girlish, and stopped. She took a breath, brushing the bangs from her forehead and resuming at a slower, more measured pace. "I've got a position in sales down at Lurie's now myself. Thought I'd come in, give my mom a break from having to fix meals for the two of us every night." Jude watched as Nancy's eyes grew wide in what had to be an appreciation of her accomplishment. "Well, it's our honor to serve a nice young woman like you again. Here, have a seat right here. Just give me a minute. I'll have the setup brought right out." Nancy turned away, disappeared behind the kitchen doors. Jude stood, listening to the soft drum of voices from the bar area, thinking about how she'd explained her reason for being in the dining room. It's what a woman of independent means would have said. She handled herself pretty well. The ladies' entrance door swung in with a hiss, and Jude looked up to see a young woman ushering before her two children whose hands she held as she propelled them into the dining room. The woman was hatless, with short bobbed hair. A drab-colored winter coat hung from her shoulders to her ankles. Behind her appeared a tall fellow dressed in a heavy red plaid jacket, the kind that was called a mackinaw. The type Jude remembered was worn by men who worked outside, didn't make a lot of money. "Right here is fine," Nancy called, motioning the family to one of the large tables near Jude. "Come on," said the woman, leading the kids over, while her husband trailed behind. The ladies' entrance swung open again. Two more couples pushed their way into the dining room. Nancy walked past Jude, winking at her and smiling. "I'll be right back," she said quietly. There was a commotion at the kitchen door, and Nancy reappeared with an armful of menus. She was turned back toward a tall youth whose long arm was stretched far over Nancy's head, holding the door open for her. "Setting goes at the single. Give her a menu, then I'll show you what else." Nancy's voice trailed off as she turned to the dining room, looked past Jude, headed for the couple with the two kids. Jude watched the young fellow approach. He wore a brilliant white dress shirt with a black bow tie. As he got closer, Jude saw that the shirt collar, although buttoned, stood well away from the fellow's thin neck, and that the tie was a cheap clip-on. Despite his height, he was still a boy, lost in a man's heavily starched formal dress shirt. His cheeks had that shiny, raw, scrubbed look, and Jude just knew that when he started talking to her, his voice was bound to crack. She looked away smirking. But then, images from those early days, when she just started at Lurie's, rose before her eyes, and a smile left her lips. She heard the voices of the older salesgirls quietly discussing the previous year's Christmas party and how well they managed to handle the unwanted attentions from some of the guys of her management. One girl in particular, who seemed to take a liking to her, had described how old Mordecai had staggered up, leaned in real close, and whispered that he wanted her to help him sample his supply of cherry herring. Jude had seen the chance and had nodded knowingly at the girl. "Oh, I know just how you felt," she offered loud enough for the others to hear. "That wouldn't have worked with me either. I hate fish." There'd been a pause in the conversation, and then all the others had broken into raucous laughter. Cherry herring's a drink, the girl whom she wanted to impress giggled. Then, after a pause, Jude thought had lasted just about forever. The girl had shaken her head right in her face, announcing, "Honey." Jude was looking down at the tabletop, and her reverie was broken by a plate and flatware being set before her. She looked up at the boy. There was something vaguely familiar about the unruliness of the shock of dark hair come back from the pimple forehead. The cast of his dark eyes and the pointedness of his chin were bringing back a vague memory. Then she heard the voice. Hey, Jude, I mean, Miss Stone. The recollection was unmistakable. Allie Tooman stood over her. Allie, Jude heard herself speak loudly. In that same instant, she was conscious of the young mother at the near table, looking in her direction and smiling. Jude watched as a blush spread itself across the young fellow's face, and his lips parted slightly in a wan smile. He stood still looking at her, then at the plate he'd set on the table, then back to her again. Wow, Allie, last time I remember seeing you this close, you were a lot, I don't know, shorter? She laughed, but not too loudly, hoping to make him feel at ease. Allie, looking at Julie, nodded. Yeah, since I'm a senior now, Mom says I got to start in on the business and busting tables and washing. Well, weeknights so far have been slow, so this is my first time taking orders. Jude sat still, thinking the last time she could remember seeing Allie Tooman, he'd been one of the little kids running the street. Loud, rude, in the way. Now he'd grown, but not yet grown up. His voice still had that boyish mixture of enthusiasm and uncertainty. And as he stood looking down at her, his face was an open book to which she had no trouble reading its confusion about what to do next. How about starting me off with a glass of water, she said. Oh, yeah, geez, I forgot. It's no big deal, said Judy. When Allie turned and started for the kitchen door, she called out, oh, I'm going to need a menu too, okay? Oh, yeah, absolutely, Miss Stone. And Allie disappeared behind the swinging doors. Nancy Tooman emerged from the kitchen, trailing Allie in her wake. Nancy's all smiles as she headed for the couples. But Allie's gaze was wide-eyed, vacant. To Jude, he looked like a guy who'd suddenly lost his way in familiar surroundings. Allie noticed the new arrivals and stopped, opened and closed his mouth, and swallowed. Then he looked over at Jude. The wan smile appeared again for an instant, and then ended abruptly, with pursed lips, as he made his way toward her. There you go, said Allie, as he laid the menu carefully on Jude's plate, then turned from her to watch his mother seat the new arrivals at the table in the middle of the dining room. When Allie turned back to Jude, his eyes had this wide, vacant stare. One hand fumbled in his pants pocket, while the other, white-knuckled, clutched the order pad. Well, what can I get you? He asked in a decaying voice. Jude watched as Allie pulled his hand empty from his pocket. Wait a minute, he said. I got to go get something to write with. I thought I had it right here, but Jude felt the heat spreading across her own face. She didn't know why, but the way Allie acted had something to do with this time, with this place, and with the past, and with her mother and her father. And she decided she'd not let this kid fall apart in front of her. Allie, standing stock still above her, whispered, I don't think I can do this. All these people. Jude heard herself saying in a loud, clear voice, yes, you can, and you're going to. You just have to stop being a kid, just for a little while, until all this is over. Then you can be a kid again, for a while at least. It gets easier the more you do it. Believe me, I've been there. Now, go get a pencil. Come back with my glass of water. Then go see what the other tables want. In the meantime, I'll look over the menu. And you can come back. I'll wait. I ain't going anywhere. Allie looked at her, then turned and headed toward the hostess station where Nancy stood. Jude watched Nancy, who nodded in the direction of the two full tables, gave Allie an armful of menus. Then the mother reached up and placed her hand on her son's arm. She looked up at him, talking, all businesslike, and Allie stared down at her, nodding. When Nancy finished, Allie pivoted quickly, striding off toward the expectant diners. Jude looked around the dining room. She listened to the low murmur of voices, a faint clatter from the kitchen, of soft music from the bar. She opened her menu, glanced down, looking for the dinner selections. But instead of thinking about eating, Jude started to wonder about the place she found herself in. She looked up again. The dining room with all those in it seemed a place filled with scenes, made up of so many levels, of so many contradictions, of desires and ideas, of fears ennobling. Thank you. I'll move on, introduce our next reader. Fred Zirm is a retired English and drama teacher living in Rockville, Maryland, who still directs plays, but has also turned much of his attention to writing. His poems, flash fiction, and creative nonfiction have been published in more than a dozen literary magazines and anthologies, and his poetry chapbook, Object Lessons, was released in 2021. He's been coming to Chautauqua since 1998 and has been very active with both the Friends of the Chautauqua Theater and the Friends of Chautauqua's Writing Center. Ladies and gentlemen, Fred Zirm.
Thank you, Dave, for the introduction, and thank you for that wonderful evocation of place and character. I look forward to seeing the completed work, very much so. I do want to remind you, before I get to the reading, that we will have copies of our books available if you are so inclined. The first bunch of poems I'll read are from Object Lessons, my chapbook. Was struck by the fact that it was released in 2021 as if it's been imprisoned for a certain amount of time. So I'll read some of these poems. I'm aware that the first poem might not connect with the younger people in this audience, but maybe if you search YouTube or something from the past. I was privileged to take a class by Kevin Young here. Before he was famous and editor of poetry at the New Yorker, and he asked us to write an elegy. And I had already written about my grandfather and my father, so I decided to write about something non-human. An elegy for Analog, June 12, 2009. On this day, analog TV gave up the ghosts and the snow, and the tinfoil on the antenna, and the test pattern at night, and the national anthem at dawn, and this is a test, and horizontal hold, and the slap on the side before you phoned the repairman who wore a uniform, and tubes that glowed like embers, and tube testers at the local hardware, and the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, and Elvis on the Ed Sullivan Show, and opera singers and jugglers on the Ed Sullivan Show, and families huddled around that black and white campfire, eating Swanson's TV dinners before the sets became behemoths, carted off on gurneys to make way for the flat screens as slim as trophy wives, to be put on a pedestal and admired, picture perfect as only a paint by number picture can be. No yes, off on, 0101, the supermodels say. Digital is so decisive, but sometimes I miss maybe. This next poem is dedicated to a man named Herb Kaiser, who for years sold lemon tarts in support of Chautauqua Institution. Fittingly, it's called Lemon Tarts. filling well enough, citric sweetness that lives up to its name. But I love the bottom crust the best, especially when it's nearly burnt but not bitter. Singed crunch that clings to what it baked in and takes some digging to reclaim. Without it, the center would not hold and melt away like joy uncontained. Project Lessons, as perhaps you can tell, is about ordinary objects for the most part, and the possible significance of these objects and these events. This one is called Hard Plumbed. The delivery man tells us he cannot replace the old dishwasher with its solid copper connection and no cutoff valve to accommodate a new and improved successor. It was installed as if it would last forever, like a monument or a bank vault or a heart. Cue the bongos, please. Okay, Venetian blinds, slats of shadow, slots of sunlight, angling between the nearly invisible and the almost opaque. What do they have to do with Venice? Were they invented there to cut down the glare from the Grand Canal? Or were they hung in the back of gondolas so romantic couples could open them to see the sights or close them for a moment of private passion while the gondolier improvises an aria to impress the tourist? I could probably Google the answer, but speculation can be so much more fun than knowledge, like seeing vague silhouettes behind the blinds beneath a Venetian moon. This one is about a less common object. When I was in Greece many years ago, I was surprised to discover that there was cactus growing on the Acropolis, as if we in the American West had exclusive rights to it. And this sort of follows, it's built on a journal entry from my back. Yeah. And the title leads into the first line. The cactus on the Acropolis makes me imagine tumbleweed as well, flowing across the stone orchestra of the ancient theater of Dionysus, where Aeschylus and Aristophanes circle each other and then square off, six guns slung from tooled leather belts wrapped around their gleaming white togas. You know, kid, character is fate. Aeschylus sneers, his hands hovering over his revolver's shiny pearl handles. Cerberus barks in the distance. Those saloon gal muses peek out from behind the marble pillars. Thetis drags her young son Achilles by the heel off the street to safety. Smile when you say that, butch. Aristophanes replies and spits at his opponent's feet. The muses gasp. Thetis clutches Achilles close to her chest. The tragedian just stares at the dark spot in the dust and then looks his enemy in the eye. This town ain't big enough for both of us, he snarls. Neither one of them sees the sniper on the roof. Some hesitation about reading that with recent events, but in some ways it's about that fact that we have senseless violence. It isn't comedy, it isn't tragedy, it's something else entirely. Sensible shoes. I like shoes that feel like sneakers, but look good enough for work. Nothing fancy, just light, comfortable, and cheap. I'll save the dress shoes for weddings and funerals. But now both my low-priced pairs make a sticky click when I walk, like a gummy thumbtack that isn't there. Different brands, same flaw, and perhaps the same Salvation sweatshop, where some child nodded off over the machine that molds souls, or totally awake, made some flawed on purpose to remind us the cost of what we're walking on. The advantage of poetry is you get applause more often. Starting the laundry. Separate by color, by fabric type, by degree of dirtiness, by his or hers, by new or old, by natural or man-made, by winter or spring, by now or then, by like or dislike, by right or left, by right or wrong, by stylish or passe, by land or sea, by hook or crook, until there are more categories than items. Then dump them in all together and hope it all comes out in the wash. That's nice, thank you. Honest appraisal after Antiques Roadshow. If these memories were in near mint condition without the ragged repair work after the divorce or the obvious embroidery around the first date, then they might be worth restoring. But since there is a glut in the failed marriage market, you should put them back in the attic, along with the dead pets and lost football games and the love letters you always meant to write. So, inside the box, this is from the Chautauqua Post Office. Inside the box. The antique post office boxes stand stacked in rows like tiny treasure chests. Their aged brass dully glowing in the lobby's filtered sunlight. Patrons peer through misted glass to glimpse shadowy possibilities, the staggered lean of envelopes, the graceful curl of magazines, then crouch or stretch like safecrackers, slowly spinning the combinations until the lock yields, the doors open, and the prize is revealed. Mostly coupons and come-ons, counterfeits reminding us in this life of circulars, much is promised and little delivered, more bed and bath than beyond. This one I had to consult my Latin teacher colleague, so I could have a fancy title, Apologia pro oblivio, which means apology for forgetting. Apologia pro oblivio to the latest of my lost umbrellas. Foul weather friend, forgive me my forgetting you every time it turns fair, leaving you at some Cineplex or under a fast food chair. What is so expandable should not be so extendable, but what is easily carried is also easily left behind. Abandoned with just this second thought. If I find you where I think I left you, I pledge to keep you close, though we both be worn round the edges, slow to open, and prone to sudden collapse. This is my compact with you, since you have been compact for me. When the sun shines, you can be my parasol, and I, your anchor against the wind. The last one from the collection, and I'll do a few that I hope are the beginnings of a future collection. I'm bringing our 2007 Honda Civic back from the body shop. This is with a nod to folk singer John Gorka, because I stole a line from him. Okay. It almost looks new again. The rusted wheel well replaced, the dented door straightened, smooth, and clear-coated, and the body style not too dated. We could even pretend we are starting over. No wrong turns, no sudden stops, no unexpected exits, no warm shocks or shaky struts or bad brakes. Just a full tank and a clear road with the odometer reset to 0. Don't wait. I've been writing the turnover poems about dogs because we have 2 dogs in our family, and I'm thinking of trying to collect them into a chapbook. First of all, I need to write a few more. The working title is Doggerel. Okay. So here are 2 dogs walking. The younger one strains their head, eager to see what comes next, while the older one stays to sniff whatever we have just passed, making me the wishbone they try to pry apart toward what they think they want, until they spot the fox crouching in the neighbor's driveway and wrap their leashes around me in a momentary maypole dance, old and young in a fine frenzy, barking, now, 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 now. Obedience. Why does my dog sit so patiently, waiting for the signal he can eat his bowl of food, but pays no attention on a walk when I forbid some rabbit droppings? Is yes easier to obey than no? Is the house my kingdom and the world his? Or can he only resist temptation when it is also the final reward? We have a 3-legged dog, appropriately named Trey. It's a giant crane. The wild cranes are flying. Okay. I'm going to wait this 1 minute. Far enough away? Oh no, it's circling us. Okay. Can you hear me? I'll forward to that. It's called Trey the Tripod. And it's in sections. Each section is, although they're very short, each one somehow gets the title. 1, higher mathematics. Trey does not realize 3 is less than 4. Or perhaps dogs just count differently. 2, momentum. The faster he goes, the less he lives. 3, emotion. The happier he is, the higher he hops. 4, priorities. Trey is always eager to please, except when there is something good to smell there, or there. 5, downward dog. On hot summer mornings, a dive and a roll in the dew-soaked grass is like a cool plunge in an infinity pool. 6, this depends upon a reference to a dog named Farfel that lots of people won't get. Advanced linguistics. Trey seldom barks, but yawns and yaps, canine monologues that put Farfel to shame. 7, friendship. When Trey sits beside me, he puts his stump on my knee, and I look into his eyes whenever the world seems cold. Dog tired. At times, the panting devotion, the adoring gaze, the disproportionate hurt or happiness become too much to bear, and I long for less dependence and more distance. But then again, the cat seldom comes when I call. dog shit. What draws a dog to do his business in one spot and not some other? What is all that sifting and shifting before the perfect place is found? Are they consulting some canine Yelp to see what's trending? Or are they seeking some niche that is theirs and theirs alone? Or perhaps they are eco-hounds looking for soil that needs enrichment. But most often they seem like pirates or poets burying supposed treasure where we must stoop and strain to dig it out. Undiscovered country. One by one, my dogs have run ahead as scouts to sniff out our mortality. They have shown me how to grow gray and stiff and deaf, and doze all day. As pup, they took pride in giving me the sticks they scampered to retrieve, while I took joy in their returning. But once they staggered into that deeper sleep, they could bring nothing back to keep me from the twitch and whimper of my own dreams, or the darkness of that final fetching. I'd like to end with one dedicated to my mother who passed away at age 94 on April 22nd. On Sunday, April 10th, I saw her for what would turn out to be the last time. Consciously, I didn't know that her vital signs were good, but I think unconsciously I did because I wrote this poem that evening after seeing her. The title goes into the first line. Holding hands with my mother in hospice care, she is half asleep, but still seems aware of our touch and of American Ninja Warrior on cable TV as she opens her eyes and sighs to see another contestant defeated by the hourglass drop. The TV sound is slightly muted so she might hear the sentimental journey CD I put on infinite repeat. Going to take the sentimental journey. I take the journey home. Old age seems contagious as my back aches from all the sitting, first at the hospital and now here. And my hand is growing numb after an hour of seeing ninjas fall. But then the fans cheer as someone has made it past the feared hourglass. I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places, Frank Sinatra croons, and Mom's eyes open again as the warrior makes his way up the last obstacle, the invisible ladder, struggling to defy gravity and beat the clock. Mom smiles at something, the songs, the shows, the shadow of some memory. Then the contestant gets the final buzzer, and the crowd goes wild. Thank you. Back to my role as MC. I want to remind you of this day two literary events. This afternoon at 3:30, James Hirschfield will be speaking in the Hall of Philosophy about Garcia Latif's selection, Leisure. The octagon right there, okay. Jim and Han will be speaking at 12:15 tomorrow, right here. She's the prose writer for the week, and has been leading a wonderful workshop. The general topic of her speech will be story as healing. Next week's author's hour will feature Nancy Diggs, who's written a combination memoir documentary called In Search of Appalachia. And Jeff Himes, who writes mysteries set in Chicago, has just come out with Wicked Scheme. please join us. Then also consider joining the Friends of the Chautauqua Writer Center. Someplace has a few handouts. If you're interested, it can give you information about what we do and how it's going. Thanks again for turning up this bucolic surroundings. So, Ken, and hope to see you again.